Thanks, Megan. All right, after the meeting, anybody who wants to stick around and help us clean up would be greatly appreciated. All right, the reason we're here. I met Eddie, I don't know, about 6-8 months ago at a men's retreat in West Virginia. And so I've only known him a short time, but he has brought a lot of joy into my life in that short period of time. Is he here? Okay. Anyways, he's in from New Jersey. It's a great pleasure to have him here. Thank you so much for coming, Eddie. Eddie Jordan, everybody.
So much for anonymity, right? It's Jordan with a J. My name's Ed, I'm an alcoholic. One of my confreres said today, "Are you nervous?" I said, "No, not really," and I immediately got diarrhea and started throwing up. So I guess it's not what we say, it's what we do that's important, right? It's great to be here. You guys do it a little different than we do it back in Jersey. We would never, ever feed anybody before the meeting because they wouldn't stay. We always do the feeding after the meeting, so they have to sit through the speaker. I met a couple of, Dave had kind of a little party at his house last night, and I met a few of the locals, and he told 3 people that I was leading tonight, and the first guy said, "You know, Dr. Bob said anything over 5 minutes, you're repeating yourself." And I met the second guy, and he said, "You know, we had one guy talk for 1 hour and 20 minutes. And the third guy said, "In order to be good twice, you should be good and brief." So I got it. I'm not going to be long. I won't tell my drunk log. Does anybody have a problem getting drunk? I don't think we all know how to do that, right? So I don't need to go into any detail on how to do that. Good. Welcome to the new people. Please don't base AA on me. Go to some other meetings. Back home, we call the new people steamers. They still got the crap in their pants and it's still steaming. So. Yeah, and we weren't as gentle when I first came around to AA. We weren't sponsees and sponsors. We were referred to as babies and pigeons. Anybody familiar with that? Being called a pigeon? Like, why you call them pigeons, man? I said, because they shit all over you and fly away. Why they call them babies? He said, because all they do is whine and crap themselves, he said. So we've gotten away from being pigeons and babies, and we're sponsees and sponsors now, so we're politically correct in AA. We want to make sure that you're aware of that. I was always politically correct. My sobriety date's October 17th, 1982. It wasn't my first time in AA, but I got sober. I came there on October 17th, 1982, and haven't had a drink since. I'm amazed at that because that was something that was beyond my wildest dreams. I didn't think it was possible. I started drinking at an early age. I came from an alcoholic family, so my father was an alcoholic. My mother never touched a drop in her life. Kind of wish she would, because it would have given her an excuse for her behavior, but it was a pretty pathetic house to live in, and I was raised Catholic, and I have nothing against the Catholic Church or Catholicism. Well, I do have a lawsuit against the Catholic Church. I was an altar boy for 6 years and never got molested once. Yeah, so now I can't have a healthy relationship because I think there's something wrong with me. But I came into AA and I pretty much knew I was an alcoholic. There wasn't any question about it. My drinking proved it. My behavior proved it. I was a cop. I'm a retired cop from Camden City in New Jersey, and it's fun to be a drunk cop. Sure, I want to mess with people. Be a drunk cop. It's like, I remember locking a guy up one time, and I was drunker than he was, and we got into an argument about it. And he actually said, I think you're drunker than me. He said, why don't you take that breathalyzer test? I said, I'll take the test. And Frankie Peach, who was administering the test, says, hey, don't. And I took it on a dare, and I blew a higher reading than he did, and we started negotiating. I had to impound his car. I had to make a 7-page special report to the chief on how he was on medication, and I thought he was intoxicated. And the chief complimented me on a good job. So I ended up in a shootout on New Year's Eve. There was about 20 cops in a hostage situation. He was shooting out the window at us. We fired, I think they counted 37 rounds, and we never broke a window. So don't call the cops on New Year's Eve. But I retired from that job, and I retired honorably, and I bought a bar. I mean, that's an alcoholic dream, right? I mean, you might as well own a bar if you're going to drink, and that was the beginning of the end. My drinking accelerated to daily drinking. It was a nightmare, but a lot of fun in between. And, I would come home drunk, and, I'd open up the bar at 11 o'clock in the morning. I'd close it at 3 in the morning, and I drank all day long. And had a beautiful wife, kids at home. And I remember sitting there after everybody would go, and I'd make myself a couple of rusty nails, and I'd be looking in this big full-length mirror, and I'd think to myself, you got it made, dude. And I would sleep on a pool table with the Doberman pincer. And the pincer wasn't real happy about me being there either. So, a full-course meal was a hoagie. Had lettuce, meat, all the good stuff in it. So I remember I had tried to quit drinking a couple times, vain attempts. Went to psychiatrists, went to doctors. They were all good people. They all had right ideas. They all agreed that drinking was a problem. But none of them could show me how to do that. They would tell me I need to quit drinking, and I would agree with them, but I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And I came home one night, and I had promised my wife I'd quit drinking, and I think my target was 30 days. If I can quit for 30 days, then I didn't need to go to AA. And I came home drunk, and I was awakened in her bedroom. She had a townhouse that I was staying at, and there were 3 cops standing around the bed with their guns drawn and pointed at me, telling me not to move. And I had no idea what I did, absolutely none. If the judge would have said to me, tell me what you did and we'll let you go, I would have had to go to jail. I know what they charged me with. There were 7 charges. They were obscene, dirty, filthy, nasty charges. Battery, contributing to the delinquency of a minor. It's horrible stuff that I'm incapable of doing sober. And because of being a cop and, who I was and who I knew, they took me down to the police station. They never really locked me up. They just let me sit there for a while. Let me go in the morning, about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I went back to the townhouse and I started packing my stuff. And she said to me, my girlfriend at that time said, what are you doing? I said, well, obviously you don't want me here. I said, I'm going back to my apartment. And this is where I have so much respect for are there any Al-Anons in the room that want to admit it? Hey, thanks. Good to see you. We're sorry, by the way. From all of us to you, we are sorry. But she said to me, Ed, there's something terribly wrong. She said, you promised that if you couldn't quit drinking, you would go to that AA place. She said, I really love you and there's something wrong. And that was the confusion for me. She had just locked me up, signed all these charges against me, and she's telling me she loves me. Because I think that they see something in us that we don't see. We're really not bad people. We just have a horrible disease. And so it was a Sunday morning, and I had been 10 years ago. I had an introduction to AA in 1972, and there was this club in Canada called the Camelon Club. And it's Sunday morning, and I'm thinking, well, it's Sunday morning, nobody's going to be there. The club won't be open. And if they are, the guy that I knew, Ed L., certainly wasn't going to be there. So, yeah, go ahead and make the call. And she made a call, and much to my surprise, somebody answered, "Hello, Camelon Club." I said, "Is Ed L. there?" He said, "Speaking." It was like, oh, shit, you know. And I said, "Ed, this is Eddie Jordan, and I'm in a lot of trouble. I need some help." And he said, "I'll be here tonight. There'll be a meeting. Come on down." And I went to that meeting. I met a little guy named Mel, that was the first meeting I had been back to in 10 years. Mel was a little guy bitching about the dog had fleas and the kids were lazy and the old lady this, and I thought, man, I like this guy, you know. Everybody else was saying how beautiful life was. He was just like real, and he would become my sponsor for the next 14. Am I the only one sweating in here? Stand up here, see if it's hot. He would be my sponsor for the next 14 years. And Mel was a simple, big book, basic guy. Not all his confusion. He wasn't all muddled. He didn't know shit. He was probably the dumbest guy I ever met in my life. And whenever I'd ask him a question, he'd say, "I don't know nothing about that, Ed. You need to go to a meeting and talk about it." It's like, oh, okay. So, and he wouldn't let me get away with anything. And so being an alcoholic, taking the first step, powerless over alcohol, life as a manager, pretty easy, man. It was like a no-brainer. The second step popped up when we came to believe in a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. That I struggled with a little bit. And he finally said to me, "Do you believe in a power greater than yourself?" I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Done. Don't give it another thought. You just took step 2. And then the third step talked about God. And I told you, I was raised Catholic, and I have nothing against the Catholic Church. I have a lot against the teachers. My mother was the main teacher of Catholicism, and the God of my understanding then was what she taught me about. It was this God of hell and fire and damnation. This mean, angry, old white dude with a beard and long hair carrying a big book watching everything I did. And boy, I sure didn't want to get involved with that God. It was a pretty angry God. And my sponsor said to me, "It's a God of your understanding." And it's no coincidence that that is written, italicized, and underlined, "as you understand him." And Mel and I had long talks about it. And he said to me, "Ed, it's not necessarily a requirement for you to have the God of your mother. You can have your own concept of a God," which is exactly what Abby told Bill. And if you look in Bill's story, I think it's about page 8 or 9, Bill struggled with the concept of a God. And you know where I finally realized? It was in the traditions, not necessarily in the steps, where in the second tradition it says, "There's but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience." That I liked. It was a loving God who talked to me through you people. I could hear the message from you people who I come to admire, respect, and love. You had a message for me. So my higher power and I started to connect, and it was with the fellowship. And the fellowship was working wonderfully for me. My God of my understanding has evolved and changed over the years, but I have a loving God as he expresses himself through you people. I came to the fourth step, and I remember writing down all this crap that I did. And he said to me, "It sounds like you did all this when you were drinking." And I said, "Yeah." He said, "This is a moral inventory. When you're drinking, you have no morals. which is true. I mean, the rap sheet proved it. I was incapable of doing what I was accused of sober. He said, let's look at your inventory, a fearless and searching moral inventory. He said, let's look at what you do wrong in sobriety that you don't even consider wrong. Because it says in the fifth step, we admit it to God, ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. What do we do wrong that's so natural, we're not even aware of it? And so Mel and I went through this fourth step, and that's where a lot of my stuff, I heard a speaker this morning talk about childhood stuff, CODA and childhood issues, and a lot of my behavior today is a direct result of that dysfunctional family that I was raised in. I had tools that I used back then that worked. My sense of humor kept me from getting my ass kicked a lot. Are we taping this, by the way? I gotta watch my language. The tools that I learned how to survive in this chaos weren't working for me in adulthood. My intense fear of my mother, intense fear. My mother was brutal with us. She would beat us on a regular basis. Of course I love you. I love you all the same. I beat you all the same. You loved all the same. So there was this tyrant of a woman that I was living with. My father, who was a drunk, pretty much was absent. I didn't have any problem with that because he didn't do anything. He just sat in his chair and got drunk. So I had all these issues that were coming up. Dealing with intimacy, with relationships. I didn't know. We were never hugged as a child. I remember going to counseling, and I did a lot of counseling other than AA. And I remember telling the counselor, he said, "What's your goal, Ed?" I said, "Well, I'd really like to have a relationship with my mother before she dies." And he said, "How often do you see her?" I said, "I haven't seen her in 4 years." He said, "Well, in order to have a relationship, you really need to be in somebody's company." And we started working on me being in my mother's company a little bit at a time, because she would drain me. I would go in there, and she was so negative that I would come out exhausted. I remember when my daughter got pregnant. She was married and planned her child, and she was all excited. She called me up, "Dad, you're going to be a grandfather." I called my mother, and her reaction was, "They're too young to have a baby. What the hell are they going to do with that? How are they going to?" It's like, I forgot why I don't call you. But I started to develop a relationship with her because this was interfering with me having a healthy relationship, period. And so we're looking at the fourth and fifth steps, and this stuff is starting to come up. How I had to get involved with having a relationship with my mother in order for me to have a relationship with anybody. Had to get over this fear of angry women. And so we went on to, the fourth and fifth step were pretty much done automatically because he worked with me on it. He took me through it, which is what we're supposed to do. And we didn't use the 12 and 12. We used the big book for the most part. The sixth step it's pretty much, I'll tell you something about the sixth step in the big book. If you're struggling at all with your fourth step, look at the sixth step, because it'll give you a lot of these moral defects that we have. It lists them all down. I think it's page 65 or 66. But it lists them for you, what some of these defects are. The lying. I would lie when telling the truth was a better way to go. Just lie. I remember my wife had bought a brand new van, and I borrowed it one day, and I made it turn too tight, and I scraped the whole passenger side of her van up. And so I snuck it back in the driveway and parked it so she wouldn't see it. And one day, after about 2 days, she comes in, she said, "What'd you do to my van?" I said, "I didn't do nothing." She said, "You scratched the whole side of my van up. It's trashed." I said, "I didn't do that." She said, "You're the only one that drives it besides me, and I didn't do it." I said it must have got in the parking lot somewhere. It hasn't been anywhere. It's been in the driveway. It's like, so I'm telling my sponsor said to me, why did you lie to your wife? You're a grown-ass man lying to your wife. And I said, I don't know. And this is where Mel was brilliant, because he said, you know, why did you lie to her? I said, Mel, I swear, I don't know why I lied to her. He said, you know, why did you lie to your wife? I said, well, if I told her the truth, she'd get mad at me. He said, well, that's a reasonable response. You trashed her car. I said, but I don't like it when she's mad at me. He said, well, what's she going to do to you? I said, I'm afraid of her. He said, what's she going to do to you? She can't beat you. She can't send you to bed. And that's where this childhood issues were carrying into my adult life. My fear of angry women. And what was happening was, Mel, don't piss me off, because I still got a gun. But you know, that's the truth. When I was a cop in Camden, I could go into a Donnybrook in a bar with 18 guys and bar stools flying. You put one angry woman in front of me, man, I'm out of there. And Mel kept not letting me not get away with, I didn't know. He would always tell me, you know. He didn't give me the answers. He would make me look for the answers inside of me. This whole 12-step journey is an internal look at me. So I'm starting to identify my defects of character. They're coming to the surface. I need to ask this power greater than myself for help. You get to the 7th step, and the 7th step in the big book is 7 lines long. 7 lines. And at the end of it, it says, you have just completed step 7. Now, there's something interesting about the 8th step, because it tells us in the step book that a lot of the people who are on our 4th step list will carry over into our 8th step list. Wasn't necessarily true for me. And there were a lot of people on my 8th step list who weren't on my 4th step list, because I didn't have resentments against them. I didn't have anger. I didn't have fear. I just owed them amends. Plain and simple. And so, you know, there were some carryovers, but the 8th step was a pretty interesting independent list. And I owned a bar, like I said, and, you know, obviously the first thing on the list is the barmaids, the go-go dancers, you know, and he said to me, he said, I'll see your mother on there. I was like, oh, yeah. Should probably put her on there, huh? And he said, all these barmaids, he said, you look like a pretty good tipper. Were you a good tipper? I said, oh, yeah, big tipper. He said, you don't know them shit. He said, they get paid well to tolerate your dumb ass. It was kind of funny, because when I was getting sober in the bar business, you know, they would talk about people, places, and things, and I'd leave a meeting, go to the bar, go to another meeting, go back and close the bar. And, you know, my sponsor, I would have good, solid AA people stop in to check on me every now and then. And I never knew when they were going to walk in, so I always had a pot of coffee in my office, and they would spend a couple of hours with me in my office. And I thought, you know what, these are really good people, taking a risk like this, coming in my bar, sitting in my office. And then it dawned on me, my go-go dancers used to change in my office. So they had no problem hanging out there all day, making sure I didn't drink. And so I had these barmaids, go-go dancers, these insignificant people on my 8th step list. And it was a start over again. And I started to put people on there that I truly owed amends to. And I need to tell you that, don't be afraid of these steps, man. They're really great. They're easy. I heard guys say, yeah, I went to the Poconos for 2 weeks. I rented a cabin by myself so I could do my 4th step. Get the hell out of here. Get a pen, a piece of paper, give yourself about an hour. Go through it. I told my sponsor, I had a little trouble with some of these defects of character. He said, ask your wife to help you. She's willing to jump right in there and point them out to you. So we're making this list. I'm at an 8-step meeting in the old Mount Ephraim group, and it was an 8-step, and I remember driving home with my sponsor, and I said, I got to go down the shore. There's this girl that works at the casino that I was engaged to. I need to make amends to her. And he said, what'd you say? I said, I need to go down the shore. There's this girl down there that works that I was engaged to, and I need to see her and make amends. He said, what'd you say? I can't understand you. I said, no, I got to go down the shore. There's a girl. He said, it sounds to me like you're talking through your zipper. He said, you leave that girl alone. So you're a married man. I know what you want to do. You want to go down, have a nice dinner, show her how good you're doing. He said, you stay away from her. So you put her on your list, and when the opportunity arises, you'll make amends to her. And lo and behold, I'm down the shore one day with my wife, who happened to be in Al-Anon. Everybody was in Al something. My kids were in Al-Teen, she was in Al-Anon, the dog was in Al-Pet. We were all anonymous in my house. Mail just came to resident. No last names. I was talking about earlier with Dave, I said that Rodney Dangerfield said, I joined Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, I still drink, I just use a different name. So we're down at the casino, and my wife at that time says to me, isn't that Maureen? She was dealing craps at the crap table. And I said, yeah. She said, don't you need to talk to her? I said, yeah. She said, well, you better go do it. Now, she knew that I had to do a 9th step with this woman. So I went over to the craps pit, and I said, Maureen, can I talk to you for a minute? And the fear that came over her face when she saw me is undescribable. Undescribable. I could not imagine how much I put her through, that she was that afraid to see me. And I said, Ma, I'd like to see you for a couple minutes if I can. She said, no, I'm busy. I got somebody waiting for me. I don't have time. I said, Ma, 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes. All right, she said, meet me over in front of that big statue in the middle of the casino. It wasn't like we're going to sneak off in some corner anywhere, you know. And I said, Maureen, I'm in AA, and I am so sorry for what I put you through. You did not deserve that. And if there's anything I can ever do to make amends, I'd love to have the opportunity. And she said, you know, Ed, she said, I'm really happy for you. Thank you so much for taking time. It wasn't necessary, but I do appreciate it. And I left. And 2 weeks later, she got killed in a 1-car accident. Whew. The opportunity was there. I was prepared, and I did what I had to do. Now, come time for the funeral, and my daughter she loved me. She said, Dad, I want to go to the funeral. And I said, I don't know if I want to see the family. I didn't want to see her mother and father and brothers and sisters. And she said, but I really want to go. And I said, all right. And we went to that funeral, and her father embraced me, her mother embraced me, her 2 brothers embraced me. And her father said to me, you know, Ed, Maureen never said a bad word about you. I was so afraid of seeing that people, but here was a woman who naturally did the right thing. She just didn't say a bad word about me. And that would become what the 9th step became for me. It became such a freeing process. When you do the 8th and 9th step, you don't have to worry about who you're going to bump into, where you're going to bump into them. You're ready. And it's a freedom that you'll never experience unless you're ready to do it. I can walk anywhere, go anywhere, and do what I want. And the 10th step, the 10th, 11th, and 12th are the maintenance step. Now, I got to tell you that I hear people say, well, I'm doing my 5th, 4th step, my 9th, and 8th. You know, that's a one-time deal. You truly only have to do it once. If you do the 10th step includes the 4th step. It includes the 5th step. It includes the 8th and 9th steps. So if you're doing a 10-step, you're going back over them on a daily basis. So you need not go back and redo all that stuff. True, there's names that'll come up. You'll have to make some adjustments. There might be one or two you add to the list, one or two you take off. But if you're doing a 10-step, you're redoing the 4th, 5th, 8th, and 9th. The 11th step talks about prayer and meditation. On September 10th, 1992, my wife and I got a call that our 23-year-old was killed in a motorcycle accident. And needless to say, it was a life-changing event. And I had 10 years sober. I had this network set up, and I picked up the phone and I made one phone call. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my brothers and sisters. I picked up the phone and I called up a friend of mine in Alcoholics Anonymous, Al. He's here tonight. And I said, Al, Daniel got killed this morning. And he said, okay, I'll be right there. And he walked in, he told his boss, I have to leave. My friend needs me. And within an hour, he was at my house. And Al would be at my house for the next 3 or 4 days. I don't remember if we said 3 words to each other, but every time I turned around, I bumped into Al. Dave Steele and his wife at that time drove from Ohio, showed up at my house, opened the refrigerator, closed it, left, came back an hour later, and my refrigerator was filled. They went grocery shopping. The coffee pot was going. And this circle of friends just started to engulf us, between the AA friends and the Al-Anon friends. And these people loaded up my kitchen, and they just surrounded us. They went with us to help us pick out the coffin. They went with my wife to help her pick out clothes. Whew. Couldn't have done it without them. We went through that process of burying Daniel, and we were sitting in my kitchen, and my in-laws had flown in from the West Coast, and there were probably 8 or 9 of us in there, and we were hungry, and we didn't feel like cooking, and we were tired, and we didn't feel like getting dressed and going out. And this van pulled up in my driveway, and the guy started unloading pasta and meatballs and sausage and salad and cake and coffee and fruit, and just kept bringing in all this food. And I said, where did all this come from? And he said, well, the person who sent it asked not to be identified. The 12th tradition, anonymity, the spiritual foundation of all our traditions. Somebody fed us that day. To this day, I don't know who it is. They do. I didn't do well after Daniel died. For about 8 or 9 or 10 months, I just didn't function. If you can imagine that, getting up and taking a shower and getting dressed was a big deal. That was a major accomplishment. I couldn't function. And again, this little inner circle, this power that I had surrounded myself with. My confreres, they got together with me and they said, Ed, you're not doing good. Maybe you need to go away for some professional help. And I listened to them. And at 10 years of sobriety, I went to my first rehab. And I can tell you that not once did the thought of a drink enter my mind. It wasn't about drinking. It was about not being able to deal with this intense pain that I was in. And I found a rehab out in Florida that dealt with alcohol and drug abuse. They dealt with grief and loss. And I learned about meditation there. We would meditate 3 times a day, every day. Morning we would meditate, noon we would meditate with a facilitator, and the evening we would meditate on our own. And I was in a meditation session with the facilitator, and it happened. The one thing that I was afraid of happened. I started to cry like I never cried in my life. I'm talking about the tears coming down. You can smell the tears, the snot running down my nose, and the breathing, that gasping for air, where I had this major, major breakthrough. And I'll never forget it because the facilitator was this 6'8" black guy, football player, 380 pounds, massive man. And he was wearing a Pierre Cardin suit and an Ole Cassini tie and Florsheim shoes and dressed to the teeth. And I'm laying on the floor in this ball, curled up, crying, and he says to me, "Can I hold you?" And I said yes, and this guy picked me up, and he cradled me, and he rocked me. And for the first time in my life, I had somebody with sincere, true compassion taking care of me. And it felt so good. Not for him, he ended up with snot all down his side. But he asked for it. And I felt that love, and I felt that compassion. I never got that before. Not from my mother, not from my father, not from my siblings, from another drunk. And I had this breakthrough, and I started, as a good alcoholic, I came home and I wanted to learn more about meditation, so my insurance company paid for me to go to this course called the Mastery Program. I had electrodes sticking out of my head, I had plush pressure cups on, a monitor, and every day for 45 days I would be hooked up to this equipment, learning how to meditate, learning how to control my breath, learning how to do nothing. Cost my insurance company $7,200 for me to learn how to do nothing for an extended period of time. And Basha knows I'm good at it because I worked for him for 5 years. And I learned about meditation, and it was through this meditation that I was able to resolve. Because the counselor told me it wasn't just the pain of Daniel's death. Before Daniel died, I lost my father and 2 brothers and never grieved them. Never grieved them. We didn't grieve, we drank. We didn't feel, we drank. And when you quit drinking, the feelings come. And you need to be prepared to feel them. You don't have to run from them, you don't have to drink over them, you just got to sit there and feel them. And I learned how to feel the pain, absorb the pain, go through the pain into the joy. And I'm a happy guy today. And so it was through the 11th step that I was able to resolve. Daniel died drinking and driving on a motorcycle. Now, he and I rode our bikes. He was a good biker. And my last words to him before he died, he had come over to the house intoxicated, and my last words to him was, "God damn it, Daniel, I hate you when you do this." What do you think he heard me say? I didn't hate Daniel. I love Daniel. I picked my words very poorly. If I would have said, "Daniel, I really love you, son, but your behavior really scares me," that would have been the truth. That's what I wanted to say, but that's not what came out of my mouth. And it took me all that time to process that, because I knew I loved him, he knew I loved him. We had to have some sort of interaction posthumously for me to deal with that. We got to the 12th step, and the 12th step says that we carried this message to the alcohol, having had a spiritual awakening. That's interesting. What's a spiritual awakening? I can tell you that a spiritual awakening for me wasn't some big bolt of lightning going off, wasn't the shades flipping up and down and the wind blowing. I heard birds chirping, and I became aware of it. Birds chirping in the springtime. How many times have we missed that? Just the basic, beautiful life occurrences that I am today aware of. I'm aware of the love in this fellowship. I'm aware of the unconditional compassion that I get when I say, "My name is Ed, and I'm an alcoholic," and all them people embrace me. This is a fellowship that I have longed for all my life. It's a spiritual fellowship. So having had a spiritual awakening becomes me becoming aware of you, me stepping out of myself. It's not what I say, it's what I do. It's me reaching out to the other alcoholic. It's me taking someone else through the process of the 12 steps. Now, I said when you do the first 9, you do them once. For yourself. the next 81 times you do it will be with somebody else. And that's when you go back through those steps again, showing somebody else precisely how you recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. You've recovered. You're there. I know a lot of people don't like that, but I think the word recovered is mentioned 17 times in the big book, and the word recovering is mentioned twice. And one of the times that recovering is mentioned is the chapter to the wise, when it says, when your man is recovering, you may want to wash him off or something. I don't know. So I'm at a meeting, the old Mountie from group. I'm sober about 9 months maybe, and this little old guy comes up from the back. He's got a motorcycle jacket on, long hair, beard, chains hanging off his shit. You know, he comes hobbling up to the front. He says to me, "Will you be my sponsor?" Now, he was a drug addict, too. I got very little time for drug addicts. They're so low, they're drug addicts. When I was a cop, we used to get drunk and lay on the sidewalk and shoot the lights out and talk about the junkies. But I never did drugs, so I don't relate to that. I'm one of the rare breeds. I'm a pure alcoholic that never touched drugs at all. In the Navy, I smoked some pot, but that was just because it was easier to get pot on board the ship than alcohol. And did some cocaine a little bit, just experimental. But other than that, I'm a pure alcoholic. Then there was some Valium, some Librium, some Percocets. But I'm a pure alcoholic. And Al was a junkie. And I was a pure alcoholic. I'm an ex-cop. He's an ex-con. And I said to him, I'll sponsor you, Al, but I'm not sure I want you around my kids. And, we've been on this journey for 29 years together, Bosh. 29 years without a loud word between us. We've been to each other's children's births and christenings and deaths of family members, brothers, mothers, fathers. Arm in arm, man, we trudged the road to happy destiny. First man I ever looked in the eye and told him I loved him. I meant it. I meant it. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. Now, I got to mention the traditions here because I've been reduced to a home group. My home group is called the Other 12, which is a traditions-only meeting. Anybody here interested in a traditions-only meeting? Pretty pathetic, ain't it? The traditions are such an integral part of my personal life. They're not just for the group. They talk about unity. The second tradition talks about a loving God as he expresses himself in our group conscience. The 12th tradition talks about anonymity being the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, reminding us to place principles before personality. The 12th tradition isn't about me not using my last name in a meeting. It's about what am I doing for somebody else anonymously that I'm not getting caught doing. And I want you to think about it for a second. How many people have touched your life and you don't even know their last name? How many lives have you touched and they don't know your last name? After after the funeral, we buried Daniel. We're sitting there with these grocery bags, big double-handled bags full of cars. There were 250, 300 people at that boy's viewing. And my wife and I decided to sit down and send thank you notes out to everybody. We didn't even know your last name. It's like, there's no way. We just put them back in a bag and giggled. The only way I can thank you is to show up here and tell you thank you. for what you've done for me and my family. Because my daughter, my grandchildren, and my great-granddaughter never have to see Poppy drunk. That's a gift from you people to my family. And for that, I am eternally grateful. If I lived to be 100 years old and never drink again and go to 3 meetings a day, I could never, ever repay you for what you've given me. If you're brand new, plug into this fellowship. Hang on to somebody's coattail. Keep away from the junkies. They're a challenge. Stay with the pure alcoholics if you're in AA, because that's what we do. In Alcoholics Anonymous, we deal with alcohol. And so I go to this tradition meeting, and we'd be at a meeting, and even a step meeting, every now and then they'll throw a tradition in there just to piss people off. Tonight's a tradition meeting. I gotta go. And you hear people say, I don't know nothing about their traditions, but my cat pissed on the rug today, and it's like, I don't care about your cat pissing on the rug, really. The rehab used to send people in and tell them, look, if your big toe hurts, talk about it at the meeting. I don't care about your big toe either. Go to the foot doctor. Get your toe cut off. Come back to the meeting, tell me how your toe cut off and you didn't drink. Now I'm interested. How do we get through life without drinking? For the new people, there's another fallacy in here. There's no dues or fees for membership. We were just talking about a friend of ours who lost both his legs from being frozen in a blackout. No dues or fees, my ass. That man paid with 2 legs. We paid dearly to come in here. It cost us a fortune for these seats. The men with the men, the women with the women. Go for it, guys. I'll bet you I could identify or ask somebody to raise their hand of there'd be 15 people in this room that met their partner in Alcoholics Anonymous. And they're happily married. They're happily married, yeah. Where are you going to meet them? They tell you stay away from bars, stay away from people, places, and things. Stay off Facebook. As Bill sees it, says, steer clear of emotional entanglements. It doesn't say that you can't interact with each other. Steer clear of emotional entanglements. I tell you, for me, that meant I couldn't see my mother for 3 years. That was an emotional entanglement for me. It's okay. Don't be so tight about it. Just respect each other. Make sure sobriety is a priority, that you don't deviate from that. Don't deviate from it. Don't take somebody else out because you're selfish. If you can help somebody along the way, do that. I'm so grateful to Patrick for asking me to be here. I know that I was Patrick's revenge on this group. He brought me here to get even with somebody. I don't know who it was, but thank you for the food. Thank you for the hospitality. Dave and Chris, thank you so much for opening your home for us. Patrick, thank you also for opening your home. And thank you so much for allowing me to celebrate your anniversary with you. Have a nice one.
Okay, thank you so much, Eddie. I'm going to ask those who are willing to be a sponsor to please raise your hand at this time. We need a sponsor, see one of these willing members. Thanks everybody for coming out and helping us celebrate the 33rd anniversary. We are going to need help cleaning up, so please hang around if you can. We don't have an anonymity statement, so what you hear here stays here. Eddie, will you lead us out, please? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Keep coming back, it works if you work it.
Pause it. Can I pause it?